All right, well, listen, we are grateful that you're here tonight, and I anticipate there will be a few more coming in as we're rolling along. I see vehicles finding parking spots outside the window right now, but let me welcome you to tonight's City Council Forum for candidates running for Seat 5, and I'm pleased that you're here, and we have hopes that tonight's forum will help you to become a well-informed and responsible voter. Maybe this might be a good moment for someone who would be willing to go close those doors. That may help some of the outside noise.
I'm apologizing in advance. Those are my children.
All right. So, thank you, Michael. So we're glad you're here. Don't forget that Election Day is November the 2nd, and early voting began Monday. So if you're inclined to do some early voting out to County West, you can get that done before November 2nd, but certainly don't forget November 2nd as Election Day. My name is Paul Thompson. I pastor Eastside Baptist Church, and I have the privilege to host an hour-long radio program on Thursday mornings at 9 a.m. with other pastors in the community on News Radio 1310 KLIX and 96.1 FM. So tonight's forum is really kind of an extension of Pastor's Roundtable, some of those conversations that we have every Thursday morning on KLIX. The unique reality of a forum such as this is that in order to be a well-informed and responsible voter, which is what we want to be, then we want to hear directly from those who are willing to represent us. So I'm really grateful for the candidates who have come this evening, and I expect you're going to be enlightened and encouraged and grateful for everything that each of the candidates will have to say tonight. So tonight's forum will be divided into two rounds. Now don't get too excited. It doesn't mean a boxing fight, but this is just in two rounds. The candidates have received the first three questions in advance, and we'll walk through those in the first round. We'll take a very brief break just to make sure we've collected any of the remaining questions that you have, and then the candidates will come back for those questions in the second round. So again, so grateful that you're here this evening. Let me, if you haven't done so already, this would be a good time to get the reminder. Please either silent your phone or shut it off, just for the sake of not being an interruption to any of the answers that the candidates are giving. Bathrooms, should that be a need for you, sometime this evening, you're just outside these doors, and then just keep going to the right around the room here. You'll find the women's room and then the men's room. In the event that of an emergency and the building needs to be evacuated quickly, the best doors are the ones that you just came through. But be mindful of this. I'm all of a sudden feeling like an airline attendant, but there are exits in front of you as well. But the easiest and the most convenient will be those that are directly behind you. So because of the limit of time that we have this evening, I'm also going to ask that you would hold your applause from each of the individual answers that the candidates give. And at the end of each question, after each three has given their answers, would be appropriate times to give applause, appreciation for their expression. But otherwise, just so that we can keep the evening moving forward, we're going to ask that you hold those applauses until those moments. Each candidate is available for as long as they're available this evening after we're done. So certainly take advantage of an opportunity with the candidates this evening. Get some more dialogue with them and clarification if needed as well. So these candidates are, as I'm sure that you're the kind of audience that understands this. We've come this evening to be respectful to each other, respectful to the candidates, and so I'm just speaking the obvious here. But let's certainly be aware of this. They've already earned our respect because they're willing to put their name on a ballot, and so we are grateful to each of you for what you've come here to do. When you came in this evening, you also would have seen a sample ballot. That's just printed for your convenience. This is what your City of Twin Falls ballot will look like. It'll be one of the shortest and smallest and quickest ballots you may have in all of your voting years. But it's just for the voting for candidates as we have here this evening for seat 5. And then if you're able to come back on Thursday, we'll have candidates from seat 1 that will be here going through the same questions that we have for them this evening. So with all of this, I think this would be an appropriate time for you to express at least a early appreciation. Mike Allred, Leah Babayan, and Hannah Cameron. Go ahead and express appreciation for their willingness to be here this evening. So with all of this in mind, I'm going to join you in the audience and turn things over to our moderator. The moderator of tonight's forum is the host of Magic Valley This Morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and 96.1 FM. It runs from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday. And so you can respect this, even though Bill took the whole week off this week. This is sleeping hours for him, someone who starts his workday mighty early in the day. Somewhere around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning is when he's usually getting up. Maybe sooner, I don't really know this, but you can hear city council candidates every Monday morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX. Bill has a segment on Monday mornings where a city council member shows up, talks about the city council meeting that's just coming up or other matters that are in the city. I highly encourage and recommend that if you're able to do that. Also on Tuesdays, your Twin Falls County Commissioners are on News Radio 1310 on the Tuesday rotation. And then on Thursdays, these are some of the regular guests that come through the radio program. Thursdays, Idaho Fish and Game is on the air, and then a state trooper or a county sheriff office member is on the air, and then at 9 o'clock again is Pastor's Roundtable. And then a community favorite on Fridays with the Gun Guys. Everything you wanted to know about guns, Bill helps you understand that from the Gun Guys on Fridays. And so without any further ado, welcome with me the winner of 2 presidential awards twice over from Town Square Media and host of Magic Valley This Morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX. Welcome with me this evening, Bill Cawley.
I want to thank the pastor for the commercial. I have that one memorized too. I know we don't want to waste a lot of time, but I just want to open up with a quick short story. We did this a couple of years ago at CSI with candidates in the last round of elections, and I showed up in a starched shirt, a tie, wingtip shoes, and a jacket, but we had candidates who were there wearing T-shirts with slogans. They looked like billboards, and so I figured I was overdressed, but these folks showed up. They look very serious tonight, so I want to thank them for looking like candidates today. We're going to open right up with the first question, and they know all of the details on the clock up here. There's a window that they can see where there's going to be a countdown. And these first questions, you get a total of 3 minutes, and I won't have to go into too much more detail because I believe they've all been briefed on that. So the first question is this. With respect to the welfare of all people in the city of Twin Falls, and knowing the complexity of how to address the nationwide controversy of abortion, on average, 175 babies are aborted in the city of Twin Falls, and this is from the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare. Public safety is a matter of interest for everyone who enters our city. We'd like to know if you would support a plan from our city to speak out for the children in the womb who are in danger. Please explain, and we'll begin with Michael and then work our way down the table.
All right. Well, it's always, I'm just going to get started into this. So first I want to say the use of abortion as a form of birth control is absolutely wrong and abhorrent. Now, going back on Planned Parenthood that existed within our city, it was founded by Margaret Sanger, who was exceptionally racist. She was a eugenicist and did not like the poor community or minorities. So there's no reason, They are being placed in poor communities, black communities, and communities that, vulnerable communities on purpose, because that is a population that they're trying to eliminate. We need to recognize that the value of each life, that each life has, the potential that we will never get to know. We don't know what that person or that child could have done to change this earth for the better. And you know what, God knows the potential of each one of those children, and they should be protected. Now, on the flip side, I do want to say there are situations where women, their lives, that child can put their lives in danger. It can be emotional, or it can be a situation where abusive men will impregnate women as a form of control. I knew a lady who was being beat ferociously by a man, and he was also a pedophile. That child put that lady's life in danger. That is a tough problem. How do we go about that as a community? What do we say to her? And you can't say the community will step up because we went to the police and the police did nothing. So I am pro-life, but I also respect the life and the dignity of the woman.
Can you hear me all right? Okay, I wasn't sure if there was a mic check or not. So I like to know what words I'm talking about and what the definition of all people in the city of Twin Falls is, how we're defining the individual, what is personhood. I want to know what authority is defining this, because we can have very long conversations, very passionate conversations about moral posturing and vague abstracts about my faith or your faith or how we oughta, shoulda, woulda. But at the end of the day, there's a few things that really matter when it comes to the order and the rule of law, and that is words and what do they actually define. And the city of Twin Falls with ordinance, and the state of Idaho with its constitution, and the United States Constitution has definitions for what personhood and individual is. And so according to the very current PBS poll, 59, and in some polls up to 61% of Americans do support the right to have an abortion depending on a circumstance. I'm one person. I have my beliefs, and I chose to have my children, and I have a spirituality practice that also is the reason behind that. As a position, in a representative position, I'm not there to impose my beliefs on the rest of the community. I'm there to serve and represent constituents and find consensus. And that is how this government works. So a couple of things. I think that number of 175, Mr. Colley, is probably very low, because that's not considering the Plan B pill that is sold at Walgreens, Target, Walmart, and very available, and it is a form of contraception, or in some definition, a form of early termination. So I know we have quite a large number of people who need access to that pill and who use that pill, so we would have to go further than just city council. I mean, this is a free market, and we have corporations right here in our community that provide a pill that terminates pregnancies. I want to say something else in regards to Planned Parenthood, which was mentioned and I'm sure is implied in many of these conversations. I didn't have insurance as a small business owner, and the place I could go for both my pregnancies was Planned Parenthood, and they were helpful, and I was able to process, and not only that, but also monitor my pregnancies without being able to provide health insurance and have 2 healthy babies. So the services provided there to lower income families are services these lower income families and uninsured families need. My time's up. Thank you for your attention.
One purpose of the government is to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Oh, I'll start over. One purpose of the government is to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The womb was meant to be the safest place for the vulnerable citizens to develop and grow. Yet, in the United States, a mother's womb can be the most dangerous and controversial place for a baby to be. I volunteer at SAGE, which is a pregnancy crisis center here in Twin Falls. Therefore, I have seen firsthand of women coming in who are in situations where they're scared and alone, but I've also seen those same women give birth and were blessed, joyful, and thankful that they chose life. I know that it can be a hard decision, but I realized that pro-life is the best choice. And because of these reasons and many more, I would support Twin Falls becoming a sanctuary city for the unborn. In addition, SAGE offers just as many programs, if not more, than Planned Parenthood. Not only are they concerned with the baby during pregnancy, they also have programs after pregnancy to make sure that their food is provided, that their clothes are given, and that diapers, wipes, formula is available. So with that, I would say I am pro-life and, again, in favor of ending abortion in Twin Falls. Thank you.
Question number 2. And what we'll do is we'll just move the order down. Leah will answer first, followed by Hannah, followed by Michael. With respect to the diversity of people in our beloved city, we want to hear how you would address the liberty of all while considering public use of city property. How would you help our city uphold decency laws in public parks, buildings, while respecting the vast differences of opinions? Note the Pride events at City Park this past year displaying men dressed in costume wearing women's clothing while performing sexually charged dances while children were present. The current city council has a copy, by the way, a video copy of the event. And again, Leah, Hannah, and Michael.
Thank you. So I look at what's being asked, and what is actually being asked here is the upholding of decency laws. Okay, fair enough. Let's have that conversation. Decency according to who? Decency to what gauge, to what metrics? I'll tell you where I moved from. I came here from the Soviet Union, where we had several measures of decency that you probably wouldn't want to have enforced here. And not only that, we had forced reproduction, forced abortion, forced sterilization, depending on who was in power. And not only did my mother and my grandmother live through that, but I lived through that until the dismantling of the Soviet Union. I understand the importance of decency, especially in common areas. I have a business downtown. We have a plaza, a common plaza. Most everyone, I believe most everyone, can apply for an events permit and demonstrate their freedom there, demonstrate what is important for them there, what is true to their beliefs. I don't believe the city participates in discriminating on what faith group does that, which ideology or what group of people representing a certain set of values or certain stance on issues can do that, whether that's suicide awareness or a political rally or a drag show. I believe that public spaces that are paid for by tax money by all people are designated to be used by everyone in this community. But with that said, we do have ordinances and decency laws. Few years ago, I think indecency would have been if I was breastfeeding my child in a public park. So we have to have that conversation, and not in a vague way and not in a moral posturing way, just like with the topic of abortion. Do we want government expansion and control, or do we want limited government? And what does individual liberty look like? Are we for that, or are we willing to start letting a little bit of that go so that we can impose our particular beliefs on everyone else? I'm open to that conversation. I don't have the solutions. I have ears, I have eyes, I observe, I listen, I process, and I can take in many perspectives to see what is aligned to our Constitution? What is aligned to our core values, not just as a community and not just in a moment of time or what's trending, but what is it that we are for? Are we limited government or are we for expansion of government? Personal liberty or not personal liberty? So that's where I'll end with that question. Thank you for that question.
America has a long-standing history of freedom of speech and the freedom of expression. The Constitution guarantees the freedom of religion, the freedom of press, the freedom of assembly. It guarantees the ability to petition your government, and most importantly, in my opinion, the freedom of speech. However, those freedoms are not unlimited. You cannot cry fire in a crowded room. The Supreme Court has pointed this out previously. Like those limitations, or like those rights, there are limits, even to these wonderful things called free speech and free expression. Therefore, one has to make the distinction between protest and riot, between public display of vulgarity and simply speaking the right to be heard, or seeking the right, excuse me. One thing I love about the Constitution, and one thing that I love about our laws, is that it creates equality. It doesn't matter what background you come from. It doesn't matter what social, economic class you belong to. It doesn't matter race, gender. You are tried equally under the law. And those laws include public indecency and lewd behavior, and should be enforced at any event or any person equally. I am a candidate of law enforcement. I would continue to fund our law enforcement and not restrict the legitimacy that they have provided for our safety and community. So ultimately, what I'm getting at is public indecency needs to be upheld at every event, right? If it is going to be a certain event like Pride, or if it is simply going outside our library, simply walking down the street. There are laws we have for a reason, and that we need to uphold those laws no matter who you are, no matter what you believe or what you're supporting. And I would encourage our law enforcement to make sure that they are upholding those laws and doing their job. Thank you.
So I would like to add to that the Article 1 of the Constitution applies to every citizen. What I love about the Constitution is that it is not racist, it is not biased, it does not see sex. It applies to everyone equally. And I agree that we need to have the same standard across the board. What is public indecency for a male should apply to the to a female. Now, as far as, so with that, I want to say that Article 1 of the Constitution does apply to the gay community. As a parent, I have the right to exercise my and censor what my children are exposed to. So if there's a group in a park that I disagree with, it is my responsibility as a parent to expose my children to what I feel is or is not appropriate. In my home, I do not watch rated R movies because I expect my children to not watch rated R movies. I set that example. With different communities, I'm going to quote a little bit of scripture here. Matthew 37 and 40 from the NIV, the greatest commandment, Jesus replied, love thy Lord, thy God, with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. Love thy neighbor as thyself. There are many amazing people within that community and many, many great friends that I have. And I absolutely would stand next to them and die fighting next to them for their right to speak, to their right of free speech, as I would a Baptist or a Muslim or anybody else. And any person in any community will always have a seat at my table so long as you do not have ill intent.
We have the last question of the first round coming up. Just before I do that, I'll mention I was listening to one of the answers about yelling fire at a crowded movie house, and remember Steve Martin's question used to be, is it okay to yell movie in a crowded firehouse? Flipping that around. Question 3. And we'll go to Hannah first, Mike second, and then Leah third on this. With respect to public health issues, how will you help protect local churches from being restricted from meeting or how we meet? What are your positions regarding mandated face coverings and vaccines? How would you protect churches from government overreach? And again, starting with Hannah.
Thank you for that question. Hannah Cameron, seat 5. And freedom of religion is a cherished American value that we have here. And as a woman of faith, it is near and dear to my heart. It is our responsibility, and it is the government's responsibility, and each and every citizen's responsibility to protect religious institutions from government overreach. It is not the government's privilege or the government's right to stop people from gathering in their church or any form of worship and practice. That involvement isn't their place. They should not be able to place restrictions. People who show up to church realize that there is a risk involved because there's other people there, and they still choose to risk that and show up. So that should not be hindrance, that should not be restricted when they are choosing to be there on a Sunday. I do believe that it is not the government's place to be mandating people's right and putting those restrictions or mandating masks, vaccinations. Ultimately, it is personal choice, and it comes down to what people decide is best for themselves and for their family. Now, if that is vaccination, then you want to step forward and do that, then that is your choice, your body. However, if you do not feel comfortable with that serum going into your body, then you too should be able to step back and say no. Hannah Cameron, seat 5, thank you.
So, with our current politics, there's a saying that goes, never let a tragedy go to waste, and I think the coronavirus was absolutely one of those events. If one thing has become very, very clear and evident, that the coronavirus has been used to take away our rights, our freedoms, and our religion. This became very, very apparent to me when they shut everything down for 2 weeks to slow the spread. Now, try and explain to me how we are safer going to a Walmart than gathering in a building with people that we know and love. This has been an attack on our churches and our right to peacefully assemble. Now, the Constitution does not say freedom from religion. It says freedom of religion. Religion is part of our core and a part of who we are. Our founding fathers were on their hands and knees when they were writing the Constitution and coming together. I absolutely believe that document was ordained by God, and that is what is under attack. Now, in my house, my wife and I, we have different views on many different things. I personally chose not to get vaccinated. I would rather have gotten the virus, and I did get the virus, and it was miserable. But I trust my body's ability to heal. Now, my family has not been unscathed, and we have lost people in my family, and it has been very, very tragic. But liberty requires risk. Our founding fathers gave up far more. They intentionally inoculated themselves with the smallpox virus so the British could not defeat us again like they did in Britain. The death rate was 1 in 10. This virus will not stop me from gathering. As a community, we need to go back to church, go back to our synagogues, go back to our mosques, go back to our places of worship. Let's be a community again and not let the government take away our rights and our freedoms to gather as a community.
Thank you. I'm very sensitive when I hear about religious persecution. As a survivor of religious persecution, I have 5 people on this continent that survived with me, my family, and escaped religious genocide, where I, as a child, witnessed my family members dismembered, lit on fire, murdered, systemically oppressed, persecuted because we would not convert. And when I take my faith very seriously, because if I didn't, it would be easier to convert and not go through the struggle of resettling in a new country. So, when I hear about religious persecution in relation to masks or being asked to care about community or a current pandemic that's killing our fellow Americans at a rate higher than a combined death rate than I can't seeing him cry like that. I feel you. I feel you. Because at the rate of the deaths of fellow Americans that we have during this 1 year of this pandemic, more than wars combined, it just is shocking to me that someone still would, under the banner of religious persecution, refuse to care for their fellow American. And it's a slap in the face when you've survived religious persecution and seen your family members murdered, for people to use that as a selfish excuse to not cooperate during a global pandemic. Okay? We have government temporary restrictions in place all the time for civil order and public safety. That's what martial law is. We cooperate in order for there to be safety. We agree to that. We actually allow our law enforcement to be out in the streets, and we ask for them to be out in the streets when we have martial order in place and curfews in place during natural disasters, during looting, during riots. This isn't brand new, and it's not just within my generation. This is a institutional method that's used in order to put in temporary restrictions for the safety of all in a community. And if I'm wrong, please tell me why we still have that as a method within government, local government, and national government. And people cooperate in order for them to be safe. My daughter had COVID, the earliest that I knew, back in 2020, and was hospitalized for 7 days on a system while her system was shutting down before they could test for it or know anything about it. And I have a small business, and to have people walk in and not care about my family during that time wasn't supporting local business or showing or honoring support to our frontline workers. Our frontline workers should not have to beg for our cooperation, especially when we say that we honor them, especially when we say we want to support them. They shouldn't have to beg us. And we hear all across the nation our frontline workers begging us to cooperate.
Thank you. Quick note, we're going to take a short break, about 5 minutes, and then the questions many of you have written down on cards, you can submit those, and what we'll do in the next round is we'll get to those questions. I'll share them with the panelists, candidates. If I could just quickly, I know you want to keep this on time, Paul, but I wanted to call attention over here to the air conditioning system and just make a quick note. They were explaining this earlier because if they let the actual system go, it would turn into an icebox in here. And I was going to share that way back about 1989, my sister joined a small Baptist church. Cornerstone says it was built in 1834. One of my grandmothers had actually attended there when she was a young woman. And she then moved away and then came back to visit one weekend, probably in the early 1990s, and my sister took her along to church. And the pastor came over and introduced himself, and she said, "I used to go to church here." He said, "Well, does it look the same?" And she said, "No, we didn't have these fans back then." And he said, "Well, when was that?" She said, 27, 28, and 29. So, 5-minute break, and we'll pick it up again.
Hey, real quick, I want to ask the audience to please be respectful of different opinions. I don't think it's very fair to be booing and jeering with opinions that we don't like. This is a democracy, and we need to be respectful of other people's opinions during a debate. Thank
you. If you haven't had a chance to turn in your questions, they're right over here. Make sure to get those immediately over here to Michael, and we'll reconvene here. And we're now down to 4 minutes, and we'll move along.
Yeah, so do I, because I had it in December, and I actually, because of COVID, had missed it. Yeah. And so then my mother got it, because we were near each other, and then my brother had it, and he was going to Denver and had plasma transplant. So everyone in our family was hit pretty hard. We have a small business, so we're exposed to the public all the time, no matter how much we sanitize.
I'm a teacher, so I mean, there's a lot of kids. Thankfully, it wasn't really too bad in that population. Like kids, at least in high school, weren't hospitalized or
It's pretty bad in the schools now. It's just some schools are underreporting. But like at the Xavier, the charter school, they have a case almost every day that's positive. So the South Central District has put them on a red alert. And now they're mandating they have to have masks. And if they go back to orange, it'll be required. And then at the beginning of the year, it was yellow, so they could not wear masks. But the Twin Falls School District is underreporting it because if you can do that, then you will. And I was on the school district, so I know.
I'm over at Jerome,
Some
and
of the
so
other school districts have closed down because they don't have enough staff. Sorry.
no, you're just fine.
I'd love to chat with you more about it.
Yeah.
Hi, we're Misfits Market. We rescue organic produce and surplus pantry staples.
I'll take it. I like it.
I really believe my Second Amendment. So, nice. What's that?
All right, well, welcome back to round 2. The bell should be ringing, and here we go. Again, we're so grateful that you're here this evening. And again, would you express appreciation together for all 3 of the candidates who are here? And then just a reiteration that while the candidates are speaking, we certainly want to hear from them. And this is not there are different kinds of opportunities you have to get in front of candidates. This is actually not a debate night. This is more of a forum where we've gone through our prepared questions. Whether they answered the questions directly or however they had the complete liberty to choose to do that as they wanted to. You have the opportunity to then ask them later for more clarification if you want. This section, this round, you've submitted these questions. Some, by the way, I think you're asking good questions, and we're going to try, the first couple of questions, we're going to try to ask all the candidates to answer. And then as we're noticing how the time's going to move through here, then Bill will shift the questions to 1 question per candidate. And then the candidates will be given the opportunity, if they want to answer or speak to a question that was asked not directly to them, they can certainly use their time to do that. But that way we can get a few more questions out of us for the evening. So again, we appreciate you being here this evening. Thank you for showing respect to the candidates. And listen, this is why we have this kind of thing, because we want our ears on, we want our thinking caps on, and we want to behave in good, responsible, and well-informed manners. So here we go, round 2.
By the way, these questions, you only have a total of 90 seconds, so the green, yellow, red light will flash a lot more quickly while you're answering. But this is a question for all 3 of you, and down the road a bit, we'll break these questions up, just pass them off to different candidates. Also, when we get into asking people some questions, there may be a question you hear that I don't ask you individually. You might want to actually answer that question. You'll get the choice to do that if you want to pass on a question I throw out. But we do want all of you to answer this question, and we'll start with Hannah and then work our way to the right this time with the candidates. And this is a question for all. What education or experience do you bring that sets you above other candidates? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I have worked with state legislation. I did college internships with different representatives. In addition, I'm working towards my master's in public administration with an emphasis in government and policy. So what I'm learning is applicable to what I will be doing. I volunteer in the community, so I'm a part of it. I said before, I volunteer at SAGE. I volunteer at Salvation Army, and I volunteer at various youth programs, youth events. And I am a teacher, 6th grade social studies teacher with an emphasis in government. So I would say that I'm fairly knowledgeable on how our government runs at a state, federal, and hopefully now a local level. So that's a little bit about my experience.
Are we going this way?
Yeah.
Oh, and can you just repeat the question one more time?
Yes. I'll do about one project here. It says, what education or experience do you bring that sets you above other candidates?
I appreciate that. So I had to very much in-depth study how the system of government here in the United States works and understand the history. In fact, you pretty much have to know the in-depth of what is the fundamental structure and the driving core values and the convictions behind this country's government. You have to do that in order to become a citizen of the United States. Most people I know who have been born in this country, if they took the citizen test, they would fail it. I worked with one of our legislators. Some of you are nodding your head, you're like, yeah, don't make us take the test. There's 100 questions. It's very difficult to pass. You have to understand it, learn it, and then be able to answer it in English. I worked with a few legislators when I served on the school board. Jim Patrick, I believe, is the one that introduced it in the legislation in order for our high school graduates to be able to pass that civic test now in order to get their diploma. And I'm very proud of that because, yes, they should know, our high school students should know how this government works, how our basic economy functions. They should know what the Federalist Papers are, who wrote the Constitution, what the amendments are, what is due process, what are the underlining fundamental rights that actually are breathed into our institutions in order so they can appreciate and participate in it. That's what's really lacking in our education system nationally, and I'm aware of that because I served here in the Twin Falls School District and worked on all levels in order to make sure that more of that education is brought into the curriculum. Thank you.
So what I have to bring to the table comes from a very different level, a different way, completely different level of learning. Mine is a story of survival and the education of survival and what it takes to overcome one major challenge after another. I was born in a religious fundamentalist cult. Through my childhood, I experienced extreme bullying from students, from teachers, from family members. I was told that you're not good enough, you're not worth it, you're not going to make it. After age 16, I lost my first brother to suicide. Walked in and I found him. Since then, I've lost another 3 brothers. I know what it's like to be a kid and struggle with mental illness and overcome that, and to go from being homeless to owning a home and to becoming a leader in the community. This represents many challenges that our citizens face, and that's the representation, that's the understanding I want to bring to our city government. I've learned to be resilient, and I've learned to tell and to prove every person wrong who said I couldn't do it and I am not enough. They are wrong, and I am sitting here to prove every one of those people wrong and to show my children and to show my community that they can make a difference and be a part of this democracy and to stand up against the bullies, to be a leader. I teach every kid I mentor, you are a leader. You are either a good leader or a poor leader. I want to lead this community and show everyone else that they can and they do have a seat regardless of education level.
Okay, Michael, you need another drink of water because we're going to start with you again. So we're just going to pick it up here, and then I'm going to move to the left down the table. So Michael's going to start, followed by Leah, and then Hannah. Why are you running, and what agenda do you bring to the table? Very similar to the last question, but I think there's a nuance in there.
So what lit a fire underneath my butt was with Twin Falls is when the fire department was going door to door asking for bonds. When I talked about my first brother who took his life, it was the fire department that were the first people there, and they are experiencing traumatic situations like that on a regular basis. This includes our police officers as well, and they go through many mental health challenges, and the last thing they should have to do is to go door to door asking for funding from us citizens. They deserve to be taken care of by us. The second part is I have my children. I want them to have a country that I grew up in. I want them to have control over their future. And for them to be them to be their own barrier of success and failure, but that be up to them. And for every other kid who's grown up and has been in my shoes, it's not about winning or losing for me, it's about showing people a path forward, that you can do this and you can be a part of it.
So why I decided to even participate and hold public office first began with education. That was my first public office, and that was for the Twin Falls School District. I've been involved numerous years, I would say 16 years, starting working with, at that time, Mayor Cloud, then Mayor Hall, and I've even recently had great opportunity to work with our current mayor on resolutions that are both current and international when it comes to human rights issues and defending of Christians. And I very much thank her for that. Why I got involved this year and 2 years ago and 2 years ago before that running for city council is because consistently there is stagnation in our representation. There's, not news to you, a good old boys network and an establishment politics that is not only in the politics, but it's even in the buying of our council seats. The Realtors Association, I think at this point, and I'm not sure, I could ask the mayor, but I'm not sure how many of the council seats are backed and sponsored by the PAC group Realtors Association. Now, if any of you homeowners think you have the same gravity and weight when you're going to talk about impact fees, zoning, or your property tax inflating next to someone, a council member who has been sponsored by a PAC group like the Realtors Association, you might be surprised because their immediate priority is to meet the needs of their main sponsor. I was interviewed by the Realtors Association this time around. They did not endorse me. I'm not surprised because I told them in that meeting if they're going to cut me that $1,000 check that they cut to one of the other candidates for this seat, I don't think it's you two, but told them I welcome the check through this interview, but write a non-profit's or a charity's name on it. Don't buy the council seat. And that's probably why I didn't win the last election, and this election I will do the same. I'll refuse those type of contributions. And I feel that there's many reasons why I'm running for city council. I hope you get on my website and read my platforms on why that is. But main reason is there is a constant stagnation and a festering of our seats being bought by interest groups, PAC groups, and favoring the interests of corporations, large employers, over the needs of local people. So,
Can we clear up?
thank you.
You know, we want everyone to be polite, but we also, I don't want to have to give the other candidates extra closing time here tonight. So.
Oh, sure. I didn't realize that.
Okay,
it was
thank you.
telling
So Hannah, you'd be next. Go ahead.
Yeah, I decided to run for city council for a few different reasons. And the ultimate reason was I see a need for strong leadership, not only at city council, but on our library boards, in our school boards, in other influential roles that impact people and influence them in a positive or negative way. I love people and I love public policy. That's why I'm getting my public administration tacked on to my master's. You get to be hands-on in the community. And I want to say, I am already in the community. I'm already volunteering. I'm already showing up. But now I get to represent Twin Falls, if I'm elected, in a legislative capacity. And so that's why I'm running. And that's why I would like your vote. So thank you. Hannah Cameron.
Next question. This actually had a conversation over the weekend. Just a quick note. Our outgoing mayor is here tonight along with the first man. But I was having a conversation with the mayor's father, and he was telling me about a house they bought just a few years ago, what they paid for it, what it is now worth, and the absolute skyrocketing prices. This next question is related to that. How do we make living in Twin Falls more affordable? We'll start with Leah, then go to Hannah, and then to Michael.
Thank you. So first we have to understand what has contributed to what right now is happening, and that is the pricing out of locals from the housing market. Not only buying, but renting. I wouldn't be able to afford rent right now if I had to rent. And the other thing that's happening that isn't really talked about and isn't always showing up in the numbers is our elderly are being forced out of the homes they've already paid for because of the property tax that they're not able to afford. And that's despicable and disgraceful in a community that values elders and honors elders and so-called veterans. Well, if they can't even afford to stay in their home in their golden years because they're widowed now and they're on a monthly income and they can't afford property tax, even if they go and apply for the program that lowers their property tax, if they're not way below that poverty line, they're not going to qualify, and that's what happens a lot of times. So how do we make affordable housing available, or how do we make housing available? That's something that really should have been thought of 10, 15 years ago when we're recruiting major employers, when we're growing and busting at the seams in our infrastructure. And so that's what is required in leadership, is not short-term gratification and short-term meeting of goals. Well, we're getting an employer and we're getting this and we're getting that. Great. What is that employer going to do to offset the costs on our infrastructure? What are they going to do to provide workforce housing? What are they going to do to buy a ladder for our fire station that they have to then use to service their factory, that they're going door to door and knocking in order to buy it because they don't have the funding for it? Those are the kind of growing pains that should have been calculated into the growth. And now we can still calculate that with formulas and ask developers in lieu formulas so that they can provide some of that funding for future growth.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Bill, can you repeat the question for me? Can you repeat the question, Bill?
Oh.
Thank you.
Well, how do we make a housing that would be, I guess, both buying or renting more affordable for Twin Falls residents?
Yeah, so I think if you live here in Twin Falls, which you do, you realize that taxes have gone up. Property taxes, housing market has increased, and I want to say it's about 30% of the median home value has increased. But I have talked to some of the realtors. My brother works at Kelly Williams, and he's telling me in about 6 months' time, the market will level out. That eventually, here soon, we are going to see prices stabilize. So honestly, I think there's only so much City Council can do with the idea of limited government, and that we shouldn't have too much say in certain aspects of what happens here in Twin Falls. So what we can do is continue to encourage opportunity and encourage home ownership, and continue to encourage homes being built so that opportunity can come. I think the main job of Twin Falls City Council is to bring opportunity and not choose winners or losers. My motto, my slogan is "A rising tide lifts all boats," and that's what Twin Falls City does. It brings opportunities and really doesn't say who can and can't come to Twin Falls. So, thank you.
So I might be one of the few city councilmen who come in with dirty hands. I am a tradesman, and I work with my hands. So this is an industry I do know very well, and part of the reason why our homes are going up in value is a testament to our community, that we have a basic supply and demand, and our values are very high in demand. Now, the worst solution, I think, is government. If any of us have seen, when the government gets involved with anything, things get far more expensive and far worse. When we try and subsidize things, we do not let the free markets level down. So, limited government on there. I think we need to remove the barriers for new homes and new units being built. Make it as easy as possible for our city to expand. We cannot stop this expansion. This expansion is part of our community, and it's part of who we are. We are a welcoming community, and we need to make sure we are removing those barriers keeping the fees limited, because every fee we put on the developer does go on to the new buyer, and it raises everyone else's home cost. As far as our taxes go, they will only go up 3% a year, because that is all the state will allow us to do regardless of the market value.
Next question. This will be the last question I think we'll pose to all candidates, and then we'll just break it down candidate by candidate with various questions. But I think you're all aware that the population of the city is doing this. Water issues, on the other hand, because of drought, is going the other direction. And considering the drought could continue for quite some time, what's the solution to keeping people hydrated? And number two, I guess, just allowing them to grow things in the future if we have this growth, but we don't have additional water. We'll go with Michael, Hannah, and then Leah.
So I actually had a great conversation about this with our city manager, and we are actually doing really, really well on our potable water. And as our city grows, we actually have a plan in place that is going to be reducing the amount of water that we are using per household and as a whole as our community grows. So that is actually a successful testament to our city working. We do have other options with our irrigated water. We can use systems that use water more efficiently, give opportunities or educate people on when to water. If we are watering in the middle of the day, we're going to lose a lot more water to evaporation. So on this level, I do think our city is doing a very good job on our water usage, but there is always room for improvement. And again, this is an opportunity for the free markets and us as people to just do our part and conserve where we can and be responsible.
I would say let's pray for rain and snow, because that's really how our dams are going to get filled, our reservoirs. That snow is going to hopefully, God be willing, bring us back up to a level that we need to be at. Mike said it right. So we had to reduce over the summer a 1/4 inch. And that didn't hit necessarily individuals as much as it hit bigger businesses. And we have to be aware of our resources. We have larger businesses that potentially want to come to Twin Falls, so we have to be aware of the demand that they're going to put on what we have available, and making sure that they don't necessarily bleed us dry, in a sense, and having them responsible for impact fees, because there is going to be a heavier demand on the resources, like the fire department that was brought up, and other facilities in Twin Falls. So yeah, making sure that people do stick to their assigned days always helps, and making sure, hoping for rain, snow, and being aware of our water consumption is going to help us be in a better position. The possibility of reduction is going to be also a opportunity, or a real result that, or this is what I'm trying to say, is water reduction. We've done it over the summer, and we might have to do it again. So thank you. C5, Hannah Cameron.
So water is life, and especially here in the desert, I would say water is not just our life, it's our gold. It is why the large factories are drawn to the area. It's not only because they can get very cheap labor and access to our dairies, but it's also because they can have access to our water. And we have limited water. I think that everyone's aware that recently in the news, the groundwater was reported as contaminated. That's as of October 2021. And then also the levels of nitrogen that is runoff from our dairies and farms in 2020 was reported in Twin Falls water and in the Magic Valley. And then also Pocatello was in the news. But just last week, Pocatello was in the news for their levels of nitrogen. And then we wonder why there are such high rates of illness and cancer here in our community. And water is life. We are 80% water. We are what we drink. And the thing is that when I spoke about when we're recruiting and planning 5-10 years ago and future planning, when we're negotiating with these major employers and we're putting the chips on the table of you can have this many employees and this much tax breaks and this many square footage of this and this and that, why aren't we negotiating, sharing the burden of our stretching of our infrastructure and planning that out into the future? We know that that's headed down the line. And we can look at examples of communities here in Idaho like St. Anthony that just several years ago had the award for the best water in the nation, learned what they're doing with their water system, how are they processing their waste, and adopt some of these measures and how we're, sorry.
Time's up.
You gave me the nod. Okay, my time's up.
I'm going to make this one very difficult, this next one.
Thank you.
This portion of the program, what we do is we open these up individually now. So I'll just be asking people questions. They won't always get the same question, albeit if you'd like to skip and say, I'm going to answer the question that my opponent answered, you have the option to do that too. And Leah, I don't know how you're going to handle this one. I don't think you could speak about this for 90 minutes. In 90 seconds, I don't know how you're going to handle this one.
Your guy should put the red screen on right now.
So, yeah, would you be in favor of bringing more refugees to Twin Falls? And this would maybe be Afghan refugees, especially considering our current housing crisis. 90 seconds.
I'm in favor of even resettling people temporarily. Why haven't we had that conversation? They don't have to permanently be resettled to a country. In fact, a lot of people that do get resettled without a choice oftentimes do wish they can go back home if things are livable and safe. And we see a lot of our refugee immigrants that are from Bosnia doing that, uprooting and moving back to Bosnia. It's peaceful there now. So yes and no, because when we resettle people, oftentimes we're resettling them for our benefit. They are workers. And you can look and attribute the growth of Twin Falls. If you do the math of 300 individuals per year times 30 years, that's how many workers, plus their kids grow up and get into the workforce. So there's a channeling of labor through the program. So my answer would be yes, if it's good for our economy, but not necessarily permanently. We need to have a conversation about reforming resettlement and resettling people when they're in immediate danger and having an option of resettling them back when things are peaceful and settled.
Thank you.
I did it before it turned red. I told you I could.
Very good.
Thank you for that question.
Michael, this one for you, or you can answer what she did, but I'll throw this one out. You get a choice. Every decision you would be making would have consequences and obviously certainly wouldn't please 100% of constituents. So how do you reconcile that with the fact that someone's always going to be upset with something you vote on?
So I can answer both. One, I just want to say I absolutely love the refugee community. They are amazing people. Go into their homes. Go and meet these people. Go and just amazing cultures. So second, to the question I was asked, now, as far as government goes, it's not just good or bad decisions. Sometimes our decisions are bad or worse decisions, and that's just what we're faced with. So when I make when I'm making my decisions, my base is what am I going to go to as, my yes or no. Well, first I'm going to review the Constitution because that's what limits my decision as a policymaker for our city. Second, what's the bad and what's the worst decision? So it's not always just black and white, and I will try and do my best that will help the most amount of people, that does not violate the Constitution, and that respects my community.
So so you said we can also answer, or how does that?
No. If one person gets a question and I throw you the next question you can reject that question if you want to answer the question that your opponent was faced. I'm just going through these because a lot of these I have to say are good questions, but a lot of them are redundant. Here's a question, Hannah, and you can choose to answer this or perhaps one of the other ones. How much of the city budget would depend or does depend on federal money? I mean, do you know that, and what do you support? I think the last part means, is there something we could get rid of and maybe not take that?
I'm going to go with Mike's question about if I'm okay with not necessarily having people agree with all the policies I push. And I know, as a school teacher, there's always a parent who thinks that they can do your job better than you. And you might be the best teacher there is, and there's always going to be someone who has an issue. And there's always going to be someone who just doesn't think you're doing a good job, or they think they can ultimately do it better. And I think, gosh, I've just come to a place where, I like me and Jesus loves me. Really, anyone else is bonus. So people are going to not like you, and people aren't necessarily going to agree with you, and that's okay, right? We live in America where we are given freedom of speech, my favorite amendment, but they don't have to agree with that, and ultimately you represent the will of the people, and unfortunately, that's not always all of the people. So, thank you. Hannah Cameron.
Well, I'm going to start with you again on the next question. And
Well, so I still don't understand the rules of the game. So can I hop on the question with the budget? I don't mind. I'm not going to dodge a budget question because the majority of,
yes, you can.
Okay.
And you'll just skip the other question you would get otherwise this round. So go ahead.
it can't be worse than a budget question. There's no way. Well, I
ahead.
think it's really important that, that we as candidates understand that the gist of the work that City Council in Twin Falls does, and Mayor, you can correct me or throw something at me, is budget. It is it's like the bread, the butter, the air of what City Council does. So to understand the budget, understand how much comes from state, how much comes from liquor, how much comes from the federal government, what grants are there, what strings attached are there to grants. This is crucial and important. The organization of the City of Twin Falls that's incorporated, I hope people understand that. That's a different type of government than what a lot of people assume we have. We don't elect our mayor. So the organization has a city manager. It's kind of like having a CEO of a business with stakeholders. But the funding that comes down the pipeline, not just property tax, it has laws that direct how it is to be used. So the city council in Twin Falls, the decision it makes, the authority it's under is actually the legislator in Boise. And I might be wrong, but I believe that it is very much guided by our legislators also. So we have to be really mindful of knowing not only where the funding is coming from, but what are the rules of how that funding can be used. It's red.
Now, Michael, you can answer that question too if you like, or I can give you another one. What's your choice?
No, I've actually spent a lot of time looking at the city budget and looking at the numbers and trying to understand and wrap my head around that. Now, I have taken some accounting classes about a year and a half before I realized I love being a tradesman. Now, I'm not trying to throw myself under the bus when it comes to being a city council member. And I actually want to tack on with what Leah is saying. As I was talking to the city manager and having this conversation, the state legislators do decide how we can tax, how much we can tax, what percentage we can increase, and our hands are tied very, very much as to what we can do as the city council. And I actually think that is very frustrating, and our voices are not being heard on a city level. Now, as far as where I would direct funding, and my main priority, like I had stated before, is I want to make sure our first responders are properly funded. But when I asked the city manager, I'm like, well, if you could take from one pot or another, this is a bad or worse decision. He kindly looked at me and he said, that's your job as the city councilman. So there is a lot to dive in, and if any of you guys have spent time on the city website, there's a lot of numbers and there's a lot of decision making involved. I do want to say that our city manager, and that's how our city runs, he does do a very good job with our city, with the tasks that he has been given. And I would certainly, as a city councilman, rely on his advice and his inputs, because that is currently how our city is set up.
Well, next question, since a couple of you mentioned the city manager, Michael, we'll go right back to you then. Do you think the city manager should be an elected seat?
So I really like this question. So if I had my way, I would much rather have a full-time mayor that is elected that actually takes on much more of that responsibility over a city manager that, if there is with that role and that authority that we do, allow the city manager to take, that as much as we can put those decisions on elected officials, there is a direct accountability to the citizens. So as far as a city manager goes, I would love to see that done with the mayor, but our system is set up that we do have a city manager, and again, I want to emphasize that our city manager currently does do a good job with the tasks that he is given.
I'll move this on to Leah. You could either answer that question as well, or I can pitch you another one.
No, I love this question
Go ahead.
because it's come up so many times. This is my third time running for city council, and each year more and more people, one, are aware that we have a city manager form of government, and two, they don't necessarily want to have a city manager form of government. And I'll explain a little bit why. And this was a shocker to me. While working with the city manager's office, and we were in the middle of forming the Diversity and Inclusion Committee that now is part of advisory to the City Council. It's the only one in the state of Idaho also. I believe it's been an active committee now for 3-4 years. Something that was very shocking to me that was openly shared is that our city manager isn't bound by open meeting laws. And so conversations and committees and deals or anything is off record. It can be off record. So that made me think, well, then what is there keeping accountable the city manager or the city manager's office to the public? Because if you, as a not public official, aren't bound by the rules of a public official, what keeps you accountable to the public? Or are you more accountable then to the stakeholders or whatever? So for me, I think that it was very shocking to learn about this, but also I think that if the citizens of Twin Falls, if they would like to see a different form of government and they petition or go towards that movement, then the city council should respect that, because we're one of 3, I think, cities in Idaho that still have a city manager form of government. So yeah, I believe that not the city manager position, but the mayor position should be an elected position.
Okay. Hannah, are you looking for a new question, or do you want to tangle with this one too?
Let's do a new question, Bill.
New question. Okay, I have a question, and I'm going to try to put this into a synopsis because I had some difficulty reading it. But we had a city department apparently that during the month of June did fly the gay pride flag. And the question is, do you feel that these actions are proper, or would you think that the department head should be reprimanded?
I think that it is not the government's job to support or to decline any events or organizations in the city. Right? We have a freedom of religion and a freedom from religion. So I think it should be neutral. I know that there are people in favor of the flag and then people who are not in favor of the flag. And because of that, it is not government's job to get involved and make their opinion known. I think that no flag should be flown unless it's the American flag. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question of our timekeepers because I'm looking at the clock. Can we reset this for 3 minutes so we can, each person could perhaps now get a 3-minute closing statement? And so we can do that. And we're coming up on a bit of a wall here time-wise. Hannah, do you want to start?
I will start. I'm Hannah Cameron. I'm a 6th grade geography teacher. I'm getting involved because I see the importance of strong leadership at all forms of government, including local. I'm involved in the community, and I want to see my community grow. I realize that we have a labor shortage, and I realize that we are struggling with maintenance and making sure that our infrastructure and our roads, our sewer lines, our power lines, our gas lines are taken care of. I think that's a big problem, or at least a concern for the people that are coming here and the people that are already here. I'm looking forward to representing the city of Twin Falls, and I know that I'm able and more than willing to do the job. So vote Hannah Cameron, seat 5. Thank you.
That was concise. Michael, I'll move on to you, so we know we're going to have some time for you that way. Go ahead.
So we repeat the question. My ADD kicks off at this
Yeah.
time of day. And it's just like,
I know what that's like. Just your elevator speech. We've got about 3 minutes. You can really kind of put a synopsis into why you're doing this, I suppose, and what you seek to do.
So, why I'm doing this, and the answer on a simple note is you guys, the community. Now, I brought up earlier how I came from a especially challenging childhood. Now, I'm not a bitter person. I'm not angry at all. I realize each one of those people, many of those who were bullies, but there were also many in that crowd who were not bullies. But each one of those people have a story. There's a reason why, a person hurts enough to where they will take that anger out on another person. So as I've grown, I've learned that I really, truly love people. I love to build bridges to different communities, to people with different backgrounds. At my house, we have many people from all different parts of the world, different backgrounds. I do have people from the LGBTQ community. I don't see them as that. I see them as people. Twin Falls, we have approximately a population of 55,000 people. I don't look at people and I don't put people in a racial category or a social category. We have 55,000 independent, unique cultures. I remember about 4 years ago looking at myself in the mirror, realizing God didn't make a mistake when He made me. He didn't make a mistake when He made each of us. We are exactly who we are supposed to be. And each one of our challenges and our conflicts that we go through in life, we can take that and use that to bless other people, to help other people through their own challenges. My goal as a person is to help as many people as I can. When you've gone from being a miserable person to finding happiness, the last thing you ever want to do is take that happiness from another person. You will do everything you can to support them. And I will support that happiness so long as it does not infringe upon another person's liberty, their life, and their pursuit of happiness. I want to represent the people who do come from nothing, who have struggled, who don't necessarily have a college degree, but it's not lack of intelligence. I have a lot of experience that I can bring to the table and a lot of understanding I would love to bring to our city government. I feel like I represent the majority of people in Twin Falls, because each of us do have our own struggles and our own journeys. And we can all be healers in our community. And that's what I really hope to inspire, the next generation of healers and leaders.
Before we get to Leah, just a quick note. I think Pastor Paul had mentioned that when we wrap up after this, the candidates have agreed to stick around and just chat with you individually if you have any other questions or comments you'd like to share with them. Leah, you're last.
Thank you. And thank you for hosting this, Mr. Thompson. I've had great conversations with you at my store, and I hope you felt as at home as I felt here. So thank you to your family here. Why am I running for city council? Well, this time, the third time I'm running because the last 2 times we doubled our votes. And I'm not getting the traditional voters. I'm not getting the good old boys club to vote for me. I don't belong to a major church or organization or congregation, and I'm not receiving checks from major realtor associations or any other or PAC team or an interest group. So why am I running is because the numbers and the voters have shown me that they support me and they want me to run. So it's relevant to them when I speak on something. You noticed I didn't come prepared with statements here. I wasn't reading to you the answers to my questions because they're from the heart. I hear the question and I'm going to answer you authentically. I'm not going to come with a sandwiched answer you want to hear because we have too much of that. We have that in Washington and we have that on the local level. Another reason why I'm running is I came from an oppressive communist background where I lived. And since I've lived here in the United States, since the age of 10, and you might not like to hear this, but I have seen this country become more and more socialist in nature and become less recognizable as a free nation. And even the concept of the individual is being challenged, and controlled speech is being introduced, not only in academia, but in government. What we can say, what we can't say. And if you think that this is temporarily or just maybe a trend or just depends on a administration or a switch of an administration, then you're really naive to just how sneaky oppressive governments are by nature. Never in the history of humanity, ever, 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 and if you can prove it to me, I'll surrender all of my knowledge as a human being. Has there been a government that said, that's enough, let's not expand? And what I've noticed as a newcomer in this country, as a kid, and then going through and getting my education through our institutions, getting my bachelor's in political science, getting my minor in military science, getting my other bachelor's in international relations, what I learned is that out of comfort and complicity, Americans have become groomed to accept powerful, expanding government. And it starts on a local level. America doesn't exist in Washington, D.C. It exists in small town cities like Twin Falls. And American is not a noun, it's a verb. I run because I'm an American. Thank you.
Thank you. Pastor, do you want to have some closing remarks as well?
Yeah, let's. Yeah, let me as well express appreciation for your coming tonight. I think it's really important that you've shown the interest and that you've been given an opportunity to have candidates right in front of you. I think that that's vitally important to a successful community. And I want to appreciate the fact that you carry in this room a lot of different opinions and a lot of different ideas. And I think we can all agree that this is a glorious nation to live in. And part of that beauty is that we're pretty different. Even inside. By the way, this is not my congregation. You're all welcome, but this is a mix of some of my congregation and many other just concerned, interested citizens in the city of Twin Falls. So we're glad you're here tonight. And yes, you'll have some opportunities to have some more personal dialogue with the candidates. I would simply express my desire that you be as respectful to them privately as you are publicly. And let me encourage you to not go forward with debate with them. Ask them your question and then listen to what their answer is. And that's really important that we do that. I'd like to pray with you, and I'd like to pray for our candidates, and I'd like to pray for our city as we prepare to leave. Heavenly Father, we do thank you for the opportunity tonight. And we thank you for these candidates. Again, what a glorious moment that there is no one who is saying who can and who cannot run for these offices. And so we thank you for that privilege and for that kindness. God, we pray that you would bless the candidates and bless their efforts, bless their desire for the help they want to give to the city, to the state, to the nation as a whole. God, we as well will ask that you would bless the city of Twin Falls. Bless the city with clarity. Bless her with understanding, with desire to honor and to glorify you, the Almighty. And so we thank you for the place we call home together. So may you be glorified today. And we thank you for the mercy, for the grace, for the salvation that comes through none other than the Lord Jesus Christ himself. Thank you for this day and for these moments. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you for coming.